We'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Toyota Racing Media Availability today with TRD President David Wilson, as well as TRD General Manager Tyler Gibbs. We have a large group today, so if you could please use the hand raise tool if you'd like to ask David or Tyler a question. We ask that you limit yourself to 2 questions, and if you have additional questions, if you could just raise your hand again and get back in the queue, and we'll hopefully get to you. We'll work through as many questions as we can within this 1-hour time block. We are recording this session, and we'll plan to distribute a link to the video once it wraps up. So we will go ahead and get started. It looks like Mike Hembry is up first.
Hello, David. Morning.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Over the years, there have been varying results for new car models, from really good out of the gate to a struggle for months. How do you see this one fitting in?
Well, we believe that that our new Camry, our new model year 25 Camry is going to come out of the gates pretty strong. You know, as everybody knows, you know, we all use the same tools to test and develop the bodies, and they're all virtual, you know, and it's CFD, and it's time in the wind tunnel, and from those metrics, you know, from all that information, you know, certainly the numbers look good. And you know, honestly, every time we have the opportunity to develop, design a new body, work with our colleagues at Kelty Design, the in-house design studio for Toyota, we get better at that, because it does become a craft, if you will, and we do understand a lot more each time we do it. So you know, the challenge is that the on-track time is very little. We've had, you know, the industry had one test. NASCAR took us all to Phoenix there December, and we spent a couple of days out there. We had 2 cars on track with our new body. Gosh, I think we were fastest every session. We did a couple little, you know, mock racing runs, and Christopher went from the back to the front. When he was in the front, he gapped the field. So under, you know, it's the only data point we have, and everyone felt good, but actually, you know, I think this is the best body that we've ever taken to the racetrack. Obviously, experience will prove that out. I will qualify the wild card, and the wild card, of course, is that NASCAR has made a change to the short track package. You know, with the rear diffuser, they've taken some downforce off the car. We think we're going to be okay. We're cautiously optimistic, but I think we're the same as everybody else, holding our breath a little bit at the same time to see what we see once we get to Phoenix. Is it Phoenix that they're going to debut, or the next one? I forget.
What do you see as a reasonable expectation for the legacy team this year?
That's a great question, and I always start by looking at where they are, where they've run. This past year, they finished 27th and 32nd in the owners' points, the 43 and the 42 car. So certainly our expectation is to do better than that. We take a great amount of responsibility anytime a new organization signs on to Toyota, and to have, you know, someone like, you know, Jimmy Johnson, a Hall of Famer now and a 7-time champion, and someone who's only run with one OEM their entire career. It's a massive pressure. It's a massive accountability and responsibility that we take very seriously. But we also have to moderate our expectation, and I'll give you the other side of the coin, and that is that that they have decided to go solo, to go it alone, without any alliance, and that's going to be a steeper hill to climb. We're actually supportive of that because I think we believe that presents a natural competition hedge to our overall strategy, and I think that's healthy. But I'd like to see them running consistently in the top 20. I'd like to see them leading some laps, and certainly when it comes to the speedway races, all bets are off. There's no reason why they can't be running up front and challenging for wins.
Thank you, David.
You bet.
We'll go to Charles Bradley next.
Thanks, Pam. Hi, David.
Hey, Charles.
Congrats on the qualifying performance at the Raw last weekend. Isn't it very nice to see the cars right up there at the sharp end of the grid? What's your expectations for the race at the Rolex 24 this weekend? And also, can you just explain the timeline of maybe what comes next after this current RCF car and what we might see down the line?
Yeah, so take a NASCAR break here to talk sports car racing. Hope that's okay with everybody. But hey, Daytona is a historic track, and it doesn't matter whether it's sports car, whether it's NASCAR. Starting from the front row gives us a few days to feel good about ourselves, and that's always a good thing. I'll say it doesn't amount to too much when it comes to a 24-hour race, and we really don't have a good sense of where we are from a speed perspective when it comes to the long runs. We'll see that once we start racing, but the highlight, coming off our first championship last year with a 14 car, and the momentum, the confidence that brings all of us, the maturation of Vassar Sullivan Racing and their racecraft, the blocking and tackling that they do every week is what has been most impressive. 12 races last year, 10 podium finishes, and that's how you win a championship in a BOP class, like we did last year. So, this year it's going to be a lot harder, Charles. I think there are 10 cars in the pro class. We've got a new car in with a Ford, which is awesome to have that additional competition. The Corvettes are brand new. We are going to absolutely have our hands full, and we're dealing with a car that's gotten a little bit long in the tooth. So for Team Lexus, it's going to be about again just execution, minimization of mistakes, good strategy. Nothing spectacular, and there's no question we should be up there competing for another championship or two.
Just getting back onto the NASCAR topic, obviously you mentioned Ford in having a new GT car. They've obviously got a new body on that Mustang. What do you think of the styling of that car? Certainly around the hood area, it looked quite radical to me. A lot of the cars tend to look fairly similar in these areas. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know that I've seen the Ford NASCAR Mustang. I really don't care. I look at our Camry. Again, I'm that's just there's nothing I can do to affect anything about it. And all kidding aside, the cool thing is between all of the manufacturers in NASCAR, we have developed this process, this submittal process, and it includes full transparency. So every one of us that takes a new body to the wind tunnel, the behind us, the first two other folks are our competitors. So they're in there with a wind tunnel, and yeah, we all look at what each of us are doing. We pay more attention to where we stack up, when it comes to that aero box that we have to finish in order to get our body submitted. And I know, they on paper, the car looked good in the wind tunnel. So did ours. Chevrolet was the dominant manufacturer by far last season, and I think they're the bogey ultimately for both of us to chase as we look at 2024.
All right, thank you, and go well this weekend.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay, we'll go to Greg Engel.
Let me figure out how to unmute, and I'm too ugly to turn on my camera, so apologies. Hi, David.
Hey, Greg.
It's no secret that ICE is going away, the internal combustion engine is going away in the consumer space. One of the biggest draws in NASCAR and motorsports in particular, besides the experimentation of on-track performance, is for the OEMs, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. That being said, how much have you had to increase the resources, testing, and so forth in the last few years that you have to devote to hybrid power?
Well, I'll back up and challenge your initial supposition, Greg, because I was just in Japan the week before last, attending the Tokyo Auto Salon, and visited with our former president and now chairman, Akio Toyoda. And I would invite all of you to jump on YouTube and listen to it yourself, because his whole presentation was focused around the ICE engine, and his supposition is that the enemy is not the internal combustion engine. The enemy is carbon, and the fact is that as auto manufacturers, each of us have tremendous investments in IP and most importantly, people who have been a part of the evolution and the development and the refinement of the internal combustion engine. And hey, by the way, we are getting even more efficient in the development of those engines. And there are supplemental technologies like hydrogen that can be run with an internal combustion engine with, basically a zero carbon footprint. So we're not abandoning the internal combustion engine. I'll state that just unequivocally. And the end of last year, November, you may have heard some of our NASCAR colleagues talk about it, but we hosted a handful of executives in Japan to observe the Super Taiku race at Fuji Speedway. The Super Taiku race it's an endurance series that's run in Japan, and that's where Toyota has been campaigning a liquid hydrogen combustion Corolla, and I wanted to do a come and see. It's in Japan. In Japanese, it's called Genchi Genbutsu. It translates to go and see. But to see that technology, to see the infrastructure required to race that technology, because from our point of view, when it comes to the adaptation of zero carbon or electrification, that is much more suited to motorsports than battery electric ever will be, because the fact is that the fans are not going to embrace no noise. They're just not.
Yeah.
It's not a controversial statement. So there again are other technologies that can have a material impact to carbon reduction. Toyota, Chevrolet, Ford are all invested in that from a production standpoint, obviously. And we're also invested with NASCAR in challenging ourselves in how we can best approach that and apply that to our sport, with a filter being the fans in the grandstands. Because if we cannot put on a show, again, we are in the entertainment business first and foremost. If we cannot fill those grandstands, then it's all for naught. So, again, there are going to be some things that you're going to see, whether it be on an exhibition level, some capabilities effectively that we're working together on that can get us closer to some form of a more electrified and carbon neutral solution. But it's certainly a work in progress.
Do you, and then again, in your personal opinion, and I agree with you, and that's a great point about the other, reducing the carbon. Do you see a rough timeline of when we could start to see this on track, or are ICE engines going to be around for decades to come, do you think?
Well, again, I'll speak to NASCAR.
Right.
And I'll say that I think the ICE engine will be a common denominator for years to come. It could be supplemented with some sort of a hybrid component. It could be supplemented with a fuel, a greener fuel, hydrogen. Again, I think within 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I think hydrogen could be a real potential solution. So again, we're actively just looking at the capabilities and the infrastructure requirement and a lot of the the associated technologies that you need to sort out in order to race in anger. But pointedly to your question, I do not see the ICE engine component going away anytime soon.
Amazing insight as always, sir. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
Thanks, Greg. We'll go to Jeff Gluck.
Hi, David. You mentioned the tweak that NASCAR is making to the short track package. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation surrounding trying to get the show better on those tracks. From what you can tell, is that going to make a difference? Are you hopeful that there's more changes coming down the line? What do you want to see on the short tracks?
Well, Jeff, to start with, we all applaud NASCAR for doing something. Not what's the old age-old expression? Definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting different results. NASCAR had to do something because we all collectively agreed that the quality of racing on our short tracks, the quality of racing on our road courses, isn't good enough. So NASCAR threw kitchen sink at it in Phoenix. I think the consensus was, maybe a couple of things might have helped. Unfortunately, technologies in aerodynamics, there is no silver bullet. There is no magic that's going to be a cure-all, because you may fix one thing, but then you've created a problem somewhere else. We may come up with the best short track package, then our intermediate stuff goes to crap like it used to be, right? So I think I hope it's measurably better, but I'm my expectations are modest, just realistically. I expect more changes to come, and the problem again is one test a couple of days, in December in Phoenix isn't enough to prove out any package. And the reality is we're going to have to race the thing in anger. We're going to have to put 36 cars on track at the same time and see that's when we'll really understand whether we've gained or gone backwards. But I'd certainly like to believe that we're going to go forwards. It's just how much.
And then obviously, the fans keep bringing up the horsepower element of it, and NASCAR keeps saying that's not really something they seem to be particularly interested. I know you've been asked about it, these last couple of years here. Has anything changed from your standpoint on, whether you guys, would like to see more horsepower in these engines?
We're in alignment with NASCAR, and we're in alignment with the fans in that we'd like to see better racing, and the path to that, we're open to about anything. If the consensus is that we need to put the power back up, then we're on board. As I said before, there's always a give and a take. One of the things that we're seeing, and this is a good thing for all of the manufacturers, for all of the engine builders, is we're seeing, week in and week out, historical reliability with our power plants, and it doesn't happen by accident. It's a function of the decrease in duty cycle that's happened with the reduction of horsepower, RPMs. All of that has contributed to having a bulletproof piece, because the other thing that we're trying to get to is a multi-race engine, right? And increasing the seal counts, which NASCAR again increased going into 2024, because that has a material impact to the cost and the burden that the OEMs have, as well as some of our team partners that are having to lease our engines. So, it's trying to, it's trying to turn all of those knobs, that you have to turn and achieve the best balance and not hurt one particular stakeholder or one particular competitive element more so than another. And it's I don't envy NASCAR in that regard, because it's a tough problem to solve for.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, Jordan Bianchi.
Hey, David, appreciate the time very much. You've spoke enthusiastically about the Clash being at the LA Coliseum in the past, and NASCAR trying new initiatives, that kind of thing. We're going into year 3 of it. I think it's probably fair to say the optimism or the enthusiasm has subsided a little bit. So kind of looking ahead a little bit, are you in favor of moving that event around? Do you still want to have a presence in Southern California with Fontana no longer, being on the schedule? Just kind of what are your thoughts overall on that?
Yeah, great question, Jordan. So I'm a fan, and I think a lot of the fans have become fans of NASCAR getting aggressive with their schedule and making changes to their schedule. What I would put in front of the Clash is moving the championship weekend from Phoenix to somewhere. And I believe, they shouldn't run in a single, track more than a couple, 3 years at a time. I say all the time, our sport is truly unique in that, unlike, the stick and ball, where the distance from home plate to first base is the same whether you're playing in LA or Houston. With us, we play on a different ball field every weekend. It's a different golf course every weekend, and you play in the same golf course. It's going to end up favoring certain teams, certain drivers, certain OEMs, and it's always good to mix it up. So that same notion I would apply to the Clash. We've had a great couple of years in LA. So anecdotally, I have a 20-year-old daughter, right? She, I've again, growing up in racing, you drag your kids to the racetrack on occasion, and yeah, it's fun. She's driving from Arizona to go to LA. She wouldn't miss it. And it's because it's a show, because of the music, because of the people watching, and it truly has struck a new audience. And that's how we're going to sustain our sport. That's how we're going to grow our sport, is getting, these younger kids interested. And it doesn't matter why they're interested. It matters that they're interested and they come. So I don't think the Clash, I think the Clash is good for another year or two, but I'm not going to be in Southern California homer. Let's just where does it go from here? Maybe we take it to Fuji Speedway. We're just there. Why not? That would be a hoot.
The other ongoing thing in NASCAR is the charter negotiations between the teams and NASCAR. You're not directly involved per se, but you do obviously have a stake in that. Your opinion on where those negotiations are at and what you'd like to see?
I'm getting myself in trouble with this one. You're correct. The OEMs are not involved. This is between NASCAR and our team partners. Obviously, we are a related stakeholder. We understand there is much work to do, but failure is not an option, as the old cliche goes. And there's there's a lot of professionals that are working on this. I just talked to Steve Phelps this past week in Charlotte about it. Of course, we talked to all of our team partners about it, and we trust that there are enough professionals, there are enough adults in the room to get this thing sorted. But it sounds like they've got some work to do.
Very good. Thank you very much.
But
Thanks, Jordan. We'll go to Bob.
I did want to follow up on that. So do you play any role in those other than trying to push them to the negotiating table? And is there any concern on your part that a deal won't get done or done in a realistic time for your teams to kind of know what sponsorship they need?
We honestly do play no role in it, Bob. We have zero influence other than, obviously as a major stakeholder, needing the outcome to be mutually successful, and it needs to be ultimately successful for both NASCAR and for our team partners. What was the other part of that question, Bob? Sorry.
I guess, do you have concern over, it taking long,
so
that the impact on your teams that will?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: the teams, by now, they have to focus on sponsorship, irrespective of, you have to make certain assumptions, because the charter program does account for a material amount of revenue. So all of the teams are making, I'm assuming, somewhat conservative assumptions on what that is going to end up, and then they're pedaling as fast as they can to fill the gaps with its sponsorship. The biggest thing I'm concerned about is it becoming a distraction and it leaking out from an industry problem to the greater public, and that's not going to serve our sport. That's not going to serve NASCAR or our teams by this being played out, publicly. So I really, obviously, we all hope that that NASCAR and our team partners can get this sorted and get it put to bed, so we can focus on the fun stuff.
All right, I'm going to ask about more fun stuff. Like, how is your supply chain of body panels to the teams? So do you feel like you're in a good place? And what about engine builds, with the consideration that Daytona and Atlanta are back to back, which I assume impacts your engine builds when it comes to super speedway races?
Yeah. So anytime you change bodies, it's it's by nature of it, by the the timing of the approvals and all of that, it's a little bit hand to mouth, and yeah, all of our teams are a little bit hand to mouth, but they're all calm, and no one's screaming right now. So we're confident that we'll be in good shape, in spite of the fact, as you said, going from Daytona to Atlanta and those challenges. The engine side, I tell you what, our team at TRD have really done a tremendous job. Again, NASCAR has helped us with the whole, seal count thing and forced all of us to become more efficient. But here's something that's pretty amazing. I just, looking at my stat sheet that I maintain week in and week out, the last time that Toyota had 8 full-time cars on track, anyone want to guess? 2011. It's been 13 years ago that we've had 8 full-time teams. And that was back in the day of Red Bull Racing, JTG, MWR. So yeah, eight cars on track, 8 engine sets every week. Plus, with Daytona, for example, we've got Jimmy Johnson running a Toyota Camry. Can you believe that? Fans are going to go mental. But yeah, we're good. It challenges our people. Making sure we have enough tuners and all of that. But we're not gonna put cars on track if we're not prepared to support them and not capable of supporting them.
Right. We'll go to Kelly.
Thank you, Pam. Hi, David.
Hi, Kelly.
I wanted to go back to the legacy piece Mike was asking you about with them coming in and making the transition. Cal Wells, as you know, he bleeds Toyota red, as he admits. Him being at legacy now, how important is that piece of the puzzle in helping everyone understand the journey this will be and keeping realistic expectations going through this transition?
Well, I think it's almost too good to be true how that all came together. Yes, Cal and I have been working together for 35 years, which is as long as I've been with the company. And Cal has raced just about everything that we've raced over those 3.5 decades. And he, most importantly, understands our culture. So Cal has already made a major impact in the short time that he's been there. He's been instrumental in bringing Dollar Tree Family Dollar on board as a primary sponsor to Legacy Motor Club, and he's also had the benefit of having both of his drivers race for Toyota. Obviously, Eric Jones is a longtime friend and a former Toyota driver, a truck champion, and so it's going to be like old times with Eric, and then John Hunter Nemechek coming right out of the JGR stable last season to Legacy is going to be really seamless. So you have the drivers, you have Cal, who again have those touch points and just know us and trust us. Cal and Jimmy and Maury did a really neat thing last week in Charlotte, and they took their entire race team off site to talk about culture and to talk about expectation. And they had a number of speakers engaged. They had me talk a little bit about Toyota and our culture and our history and our expectations, and just to have the opportunity to address the team and talk a little bit about who we are was a tremendous opportunity. Now, what I'll say is talk is cheap, and that everyone, every one of those team members is going to measure this partnership by their performance on track. And the biggest takeaway that I left with them, and you guys have heard this from me every year, and that is that ours is a model of participation. We get our hands dirty every week. We're still the only OEM in the sport that builds, develops and builds their own engines, and I love that. Some days I hate that, but that's how we compete. I wouldn't have it any other way, and we will win together, and we will lose together, and that's that goes with this equation.
You also made note a few minutes ago of Chevrolet, how dominant they were last year. Can you just give kind of a preview going into a new season from a Toyota perspective, where you all are with your teams, your drivers? Of course, the new body is going to be the variable, but just again, as you normally do going into a new season, kind of just where
Sure.
you feel everyone's at.
Sure. Well, I'll look in the rearview mirror just for a minute, and looking at the 2023 season. 2023 was was a strong year for Toyota. We, particularly in the latter half of the year, the speed that we have was second to none. I think we were by and large, wherever we raced, the fastest on track. We had 16 poles last season. We had 8 of the last 10. The 8 of the 10 playoff races, Toyota sat on the pole, including 2311 at 2 of those 8. So we were not lacking for speed, and mind you, that's the hardest thing if you are. We were a little bit challenged with racecraft, pit lane consistency, and as we've talked about in particular with this new car, you're not going to win a championship. You're not going to win a race unless you perform flawlessly or near flawlessly in pit lane. That has become a critical performance component in our sport, and I love it. That makes this sport so special. But we need to be better, and so that's a quick, handicapping from 2023. 2024, I'd be very disappointed if we don't pick up where we left off when it comes to speed. As I talked about earlier, this new Camry body is just badass. It really is, and we expect it to be better. We expect it to be better in the speedways. We've got 2 more cars, 3 with Jimmy at Daytona, so we're actually going to have a pack. Our pack has always been kind of disappointing, but we've got some numbers now to work with, and so I'll get right down to it. All 4 JGR cars should win, should make the playoffs. Ty Gibbs, I think this is his year to come into, he's coming into himself from a confidence perspective, from a performance perspective. We expect Ty to win this year. We expect 2311 to do the same, to win, both cars to be in the playoffs. Legacy, again, I'm not, it would be a stretch goal for one of their 2 cars to make the playoffs, but I think that's a stretch. I think we have to moderate. Again, they're doing it solo. First year with Toyota, they're drinking through a fire hose. They really are, because it's the way that we support. It's the data, it's the technology, and that's that's going to take some reps under their belt to get proficient with. So, as I said a minute ago, we're standing with them shoulder to shoulder every week, helping them get better. But honestly, we've got a lot to be excited about. I just saw Matt Kenseth at the Hall of Fame function last week, and Matt's back. And Matt, this is not an honorary deal. He's in the shop. He's going to be in the competition meetings, and you all remember Matt and my stories about him being the adult in the room, holding drivers accountable. He's going to be critical, I believe, to the development and the success of both Eric and John Hunter, and that's awesome. Plus, he's just a good dude, and he's a good friend to Toyota.
Thanks, Kelly. We'll go to Stephen.
David, I'll ask this question realizing it's probably more suited to 2311 itself, but are there any plans for the 67 car that ran in a couple of races last year to run again this year? I know that Toyota Gazoo was very heavily involved when Kamui Kobayashi ran Indianapolis, and Kobayashi-san also expressed interest in running NASCAR again. So whether it's with the 67 or with the 84 car that Jimmy will run, are there any plans for Toyota to run and support another car for one-offs, international drivers, that sort of thing?
Well, I will smile and say, stay tuned. That's all I can really say at this moment. But the experience we had with Kamui at Indianapolis, and his experience and getting to announce it at Le Mans last year was one of the highlights of 2023, and everybody enjoyed it. And so I'll just go ... and ask you to stay tuned.
I'll take your word for that, but I will also say that I believe Kobayashi had a contingent of I think some other drivers from either Super GT or MotoGP, one other series in Japan, with him when he raced Indy. Or any, I guess you'll give the same answer, but are any of them maybe going to be involved in that?
Yeah. So here's a little anecdote. One of the things that we're working on, you all know about our investment in drivers, and I think many of you may understand a little bit about the politics of global racing within Toyota. The short version is that each major distributorship, so North America is a distributor, each of us basically dictate, decide, set the strategy as to where we race, why we race, to suit our respective markets, right? And it's a decentralized model, if you will, right? And that's terrific. It's worked very well for us because our needs are different than they are in Europe and than they are in Asia. We sell different cars, and so that makes a lot of sense. A decentralized model also presents some inefficiencies, right? And we have colleagues, in Europe and Asia developing drivers as well. So we're having a lot more dialogue, and Kamui coming over here and bringing some folks and bringing some top management from Japan to see how we race and to see, go up and visit the Toyota Performance Center in Mooresville, and to get some insight as to the investment we're making has caused us to have a global conversation about drivers. And I think what you'll find is we'll be doing some more, more trading and experimentation. We have the reigning GT 500 champion racing this weekend in Daytona in one of our Lexus GTD cars, and that was kind of an offshoot of this. We've sent some of our drivers to to Europe and Japan to do some testing with our colleagues over there. So, I would love nothing more to get more diversity in drivers internationally into our sport. I think we obviously saw that a couple of times, not just with Kamui, but with some other Formula One or ex-Formula One drivers and the Aussie
Supercars.
Supercar drivers. So that's good for our sport because it draws international eyes on our sport. That race at Indianapolis was televised in Japan. NASCAR races, by the way, aren't normally televised in Japan, and Kamui has a huge following over there. So I made light about maybe running a Clash at Fuji Speedway, but is that such a stretch if we're able to build some a broader international audience?
Thanks, Stephen. We'll go to Dustin Long.
Thank you. Hey, David, you talked earlier when asked about the Clash. You mentioned moving the championship race beyond Phoenix. And look, that's not a new thing that's been discussed by some in the sport. But I guess I would ask in the sense of, you talked about performance, and some tracks don't work as well with drivers or teams or OEMs potentially. I guess, it's been 4 years that it's been at Phoenix, and I understand it's a personal opinion. Hey, you like to see some things move around. I guess I would ask the counter thing is, why haven't you won a championship? Why haven't you gotten better at that track per se? because everybody knows that's the championship race, and there's so much focus, and maybe I'm being a little blunt about it, but I understand what you're saying. But I guess I turn around and say, well, that's fine, but go do it.
Good on you, Dustin. And you put a tie on for that question. I appreciate that. Hey, you know what? I am not ducking. I hope it doesn't come across that way. You're 100% right. It's completely unacceptable that we have yet to. Is that right? Yeah, we have yet to win a championship in Phoenix, and I can go back and make excuses. Some years, and again, we'll say that for another day. But the buck stops here. It stops with our team partners, and we, bottom line, haven't gotten the job done. Now, we also know, I talked about, Chevy being the dominant OEM last year. They won what, 20 races or something stupid like that, and we won 10 plus the Clash. But we also know that this is, the format. It's any given Sunday, and there's that effect, arguably, that's happened the last 2 consecutive years. And you gotta give the shout out to the Fords and and Penske Racing, because they were the most challenged OEM last year. I'm not telling anybody nothing that we don't already know, that they would admit. Yes, Ryan Blaney, he talked about it most of the year, how they were behind. They got hot when it counted. They executed across the entire spectrum: racecraft, pit lane, driver, and they got out there and won a championship. So we don't look at the horizon and hey, if that were the case, I honestly, what's wrong with Kansas for a championship? It's the middle of the country, Central Time Zone. It's Kansas. Kidding. Yeah.
Kansas City fan.
Hey, yeah, we run pretty good at Kansas too. But yeah, our focus is Phoenix. Dustin, all kidding aside, and we all, believe me, we put so much emphasis on that, and we look to the spring race and the races like Richmond and the ones that are closest to Phoenix, because that is our championship, and there's nothing we can do about it at this point, because we know we're going back to Phoenix this year. So
I also wanted to ask you, and I'm not trying to be the downer guy, but I guess I'm going to play that role. Hey, look, I know as a manufacturer, you guys are parts and pieces, but you talked about earlier about pit crews and pit road, how important that is. And obviously we have heard the discussion of the talk the last couple of years. Pit road's got to be better for JGR, the Toyota teams. Pit road's got to be better. And look, I know some things have been tried and they didn't work and got changed, but it's just like, it's almost kind of this, this repeating issue. And look, I know you do parts and pieces, but I guess in one sense, like you say, the buck stops with you. What does Toyota do? How does Toyota help fortify pit road for its teams? Because of, you talked about all the importance there.
Yeah. Now, we've lost races. We've lost championships. Yeah. Again, if you want to dive into it, we've lost championships, at least a couple over the past handful of years, because of the last pit stop. And that's for all the areas where we touch a team, and it's hard to find a part of the piece of the car that we don't have our hands in. The pit lane is something that we just can't affect. Joe Gibbs once told me, and you can imagine, we haven't talked about legacy much, but bringing a new team on as an OEM to a family that's already existed, that was a stress. Last year was very stressful, and there was a lot of distraction once we made the announcement about legacy, because both, whether you're Joe Gibbs Racing or you're 2311, their nature as race winners and potential champions is to be selfish. They are not happy about Toyota broadening our, footprint. They're just not, and they shouldn't be. And they wouldn't be who they are if they were happy about it. But Joe Gibbs once told me, again, whether it's coaching football or running a race team, if they can't get it done, then they know we're going to keep looking for teams that can get it done. That's inherent. That's what competition is about. That's the expectations that we have, and so, again, I feel like we're in a good place with the teams. I think we have a strategy now from a competition perspective that will carry us for years to come. And let me back up to say that we do not have a crisis of confidence with Joe Gibbs Racing. There were some directionally things that happened 2 years ago. When the new car came, they were a bit like a gambler chasing their money with that different choreography. They chased it all year, where the rest of the garage gave up and went back to the tried and true, and that cost them almost a year, because while the choreography was the same, it's a different race car. It's a single lug. The athletes that are best are different one choreography to another, and so they were in catch-up mode last year. They got better, no doubt about it. I really think this is the year where they're going to be on par with the competition in that regard. So, and listen, that's one component. It's not the only component. The drivers have to do their jobs, and it's not just the guys that come over the walls. It's too many speeding penalties. It's the things that are in the driver's hand to control. So, all of those things have to come together to put us in position to win more races and win more championships.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll go back to Bob.
Great questions, Dustin. Thank you for putting me on my heels.
I'm curious what your plans are for Jade Avedizian, just as far as development, and do you plan to follow kind of the same roadmap that like Christopher Bell did, or is there a different roadmap now coming out of sprint cars?
I'm going to pass that to my colleague, Tyler Gibbs.
Good morning, Bob. Good question. So with Jade, as you know, she competed in the Extreme Series last year, won the championship. So for us, we're going to watch her race in dirt another year with the USAC guys. The competition will be even tougher there. And so we're going to watch her there. We're going to give her some road course experience with our GR Cup program. So she'll get to turn left and right there on pavement in a fairly controlled environment. So from there, she'll get some pavement tests over the course of the year. But broadly, we want to make sure that we give her the time to be successful at each level. This is not a race to get her to some particular point. It's really about her maturation as a driver as well as a person. So she showed, again, incredible poise over the course of the last year and a half or so. And we're excited just to watch that continue to develop and see how she does.
I guess this will probably be for David. I'm curious, have you been to the new 2311 shop yet? And do you have any idea why that shop will make them go faster?
Actually, I'm going to hand this to Tyler because I haven't been. I missed the tour the last week while I was in Charlotte, but I know Tyler has walked the grounds, and I've heard from many people who have been in and are working in there. Tyler, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Bob. I think their answer, and certainly looking at it from my perspective and TRD's perspective, I think that facility is going to be really a great opportunity for them from a recruiting and retention perspective. The tools and the environment and just the whole kind of space is certainly a place that is very, very inviting from an employee perspective. And so I think for them, it shows their intent. It shows their investment in being involved. This is not a fly-by-night organization or a short-term experiment. This puts their chips on the table to say we're here for a long time and going to do this at a very high level. So I think all those things are what don't directly make them faster, but those people that they'll be able to recruit and retain and the tools that are there will in fact make them faster.
I think it sets a new bar for a race facility in our sport. I mean, it's Formula One level.
Really beautiful. Really beautiful.
All right. Looks like we'll close it out with Kelly. We just have a few minutes remaining.
Yeah, David, I just had one more thing. I can't let you go, of course, without asking an NHRA question. So getting ready for a new season there and Dougie finally having that monkey off his back and winning that championship.
Yeah, I tell you what, the Clitta family have been such great partners. They have been family, and to be a part of Dougie winning his first after how many runner-up finishes? It's ridiculous when I saw that the other day. But you couldn't be happier for him. And again, that gives us a great shot in the arm to hit 2024 running hard with another great year in NHRA.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tyler and David, and thanks to all the media for joining us today.